Best thing about my wife is her sister. I didn't know when we got married 8 years ago that I'd feel this way after a year. But that's how long it took me to realize just what kind of person I had gotten involved with. It was too late because we were pregnant and expecting. And we're still together because of the kids. But ever since I came to realize who she was, I realized that the most wonderful, amazing, beautiful thing about her is her sister. I was always crushing on her since I had seen her, but it was never anything serious. I always tried to keep my thoughts honorable and faithful. But after getting to know her, after she moved in when she got divorced and got rid of their house, after they've been here for more than a year now, I realized that she's the most wonderful human being I've ever met in my entire life. Where my wife is cold and mean to our kids and to me, she's warm and loving. Where my wife yells and escalates, she comforts and calms. Where my wife brings out the worst in me, she brings out the best. Where my wife makes our kids scared and walk on eggshells all the time when she get home, her sister creates an environment, just as their aunt, which makes them feel loved and cared for. Where my wife looks at her work email all the damn time while our daughter is trying to show her what she did in school, her sister puts our kids in her lap and takes an interest. She's beautiful in every way, my wife is ugly. She's gracious in every way, my wife is mean and cold. My wife says things about me to her friends while I provide for this family and take care of everything in our house. Her sister won't even badmouth her alcoholic ex-husband to anyone just because he's still the father of her kids, and she doesn't want them to lose out on having a healthy relationship because fathers are important. I have put our kids to bed almost every day that they've been able to be read to and tucked in. I've felt alone in doing this for years. But I love them and I love that time with them. I wished my wife could have been there reading stories, telling jokes with me to them, snuggling. The first and only time I stopped feeling lonely is when her sister moved in. She actually helps me with bedtime, not only for her own kids but for ours. She makes sure they are brushed so I can make sure they have clean pajamas and their beds are ready. She even kisses our kids goodnight after seeing to her own. All while my wife is either coming home late from work, or on her laptop somewhere in the basement working. At a job that we don't even need her to be lost in because I already make 7 times more than her and am perfectly capable of taking care of our entire house. After that first year of our marriage, I have never even had sex with my wife where I didn't imagine it was her sister instead. I don't even look at my ring without wishing it was hers. I don't think about love without thinking about her. Even before she and her kids moved in, while she builds her finances back up, I used to make sure our kids saw her as much as possible and hung out with their cousins as much as possible. My wife asked me once, "Why are you always setting up playdates with their kids?" Do you know why? Because she's such a nurturing, kind, loving, patient, amazing human being, that our kids thrive when they are with her. I want them to know what a good mother actually looks like by looking at her, by being loved by her, by being around her kids, because all they get with my wife is yelling, verbal abuse, nitpicking on their faults, and making them feel like all they can do is make mistakes. They are 4 and 7 and I don't know how my wife treats them or me this way. A few months ago my hand brushed hers while we were both putting breakfast on the island for the kids and I looked at her face and saw love. A few months later we were just playing around in the kitchen and got into a food fight and we threw little spoons of mashed potatoes at each other. After we were done, I wiped some of it off her chin and she wiped it off my arm for me. I just said it. I looked at her and smiled and got really serious and just said I wish. And she knew. She said I do too, but you know. And we left it there. We never did anything again. She's too loyal to my wife. We took our hands away and went on with our day, but I love that woman with every fiber of my being. I've seen her at her worst and at her best. Her integrity, loyalty to her family, and the fact that she would never, ever betray my wife or cause the breakup of our marriage, is the only reason I haven't given up and just asked her. When I put gas in her car, when I get it washed, when I take her kids and our kids to the park or the mall or somewhere so she can get a break, you know what she says? Thank you so much. She asks me how the kids were. She welcomes them back home. Hers and ours. And she's usually made snacks so they can get refreshments after playing. What does my wife do? She says things like "You're already back?" Like her vacation from us wasn't long enough. The other things that's nuts, despite being married to my wife, I communicate better with her sister. About everything. When I took her kids for their before school checkups, when I helped get them registered in our district, whenever I do anything with her that requires cooperation, it's smooth as butter. Working with her on the logistics of life is a joy. Even going to Costco with her, something my wife is always too busy to do, is so much for fun for me because I pretend that she and I and her 2 kids and our 2 kids are a family. I lose myself in the fantasy of that moment and honestly I know she does too. We share shopping lists and figure out what the house needs and we have fun trying out the samples together like we are a family. Every moment with her sister is a paradise and is the opposite of every moment with my wife. I don't know what the hell to do with this. She's smarter, sexier, kinder, just everything that I had hoped to find in my wife. It's torture that she lives with us because there isn't a moment I'm with my wife that I'm not thinking about her sister. The slight resemblance on my wife's face and is enough to make me think of her instead. I hope every day that my wife just goes ahead and leaves us. Takes half the money, I don't care. She doesn't want me or the kids anyways when I look at her actions and the way she lives her life. I wish she'd leave so her sister and I could build a life together that actually has love in it. I'd love to spend the rest of my life loving her, and would be honored to have her beautiful, sweet children join my family. God, I wish this wasn't so hard.